My dear children, the name of this chapter, the methods of inquiry in psychology. From this chapter, children, you have to know about the aims of psychological inquiry and various kinds of data, various kinds of methods as our psychology students, and how we will collect data and which method psychologists use, and limitation of psychological inquiry and ethics of psychological research. Now today's topics are goals of psychological inquiry, steps in conducting scientific research, and various kinds of data. And now first, goals or aims of psychological inquiry. What are the goals of psychological research? And now you know already psychology is a science. Yes. Like any scientific research, psychological inquiry has various kinds of goals or aims. Description, prediction, we can explain, we can control, and application. Yes. Now first, descriptions. And description, involves observing a behavior. Yes, we can observe individuals' behavior, we can describe individuals' behavior. What is happening, where it happens, under what circumstances it seems to happen, to whom it happens, various kinds of things. Yes. And for example, researcher may be interested in observing study habits among students. Yes. Study habits may consist of diverse range of behaviors. Yes. And attending all your classes regularly, submitting assignments on time, and planning, yes, revising work. So the researcher needs to describe, the study habits. Yes, and the description requires recording of a particular behavior and which helps in its proper understanding. Yes. Next, prediction. We can predict also. The second goal of scientific inquiry, prediction of behavior. Yes. And on the basis of study, for example, a researcher is able to establish a positive relationship between the amount of study time and achievement in different subjects. Yes, that means we can predict the relationship between study time and achievement. Yes, and prediction becomes more accurate with the increase in the numbers of persons observed. And now next, explanation. The third goal of psychological inquiry, the causal factor or determinants of behavior. We can explain individuals' behavior. Yes, we can find out the causes of individuals' behavior. Yes. That means, for example, what makes some children more attentive in the class? Yes. And why some children devote less time for study? So, the goal is concerned with identifying the determinants or factors or causes of behavior. Yes. And now, next, control. We can control also. Yes. And control refers to three things: making a particular behavior happen, reducing it, or enhancing it. That means we can change individuals' behavior. Yes, we can control individual behavior. And for example, You can allow the number of hours devoted to study to be the same, or you can reduce them, or there may be an increase in the study hours. Yes. And we can provide therapy. Yes. And now application. The final goal of the scientific inquiry, application and psychological research is conducted to solve problems in various settings. Yes. And scientific inquiry is also conducted to develop new theories. Yes. So now the goals of psychological inquiry, description, prediction, explanation, control and application. Now children, steps in conducting scientific research. Now, what is research? What is the meaning of research? And research, means investigate systematically. Yes. And research, through research, we can create new knowledge. Yes. We can use our existing knowledge also. Yes, in a new and creative way. So what are the important characteristics of scientific research? One is objectivity. Other one is systematic procedure. We can use systematic procedure. Now, objectivity. What is the meaning of objectivity? Objectivity means, no subjective biases are present. Yes. And objectivity refers to the fact that if two or more persons independently study a particular event, both of them, to a great extent, should arrive at a same conclusion. Yes, that means no subjective biases are present. Yes, for example, if you and your friend measure the length of a table using the same measuring device, it is likely that both of you would arrive at the same conclusion about its length. Yes. And the objectivity is important also for our research. That means we want to remove subjective biases. And other one is, the systematic procedure. Now, the steps of research, steps of conducting scientific inquiry or research. First, conceptualizing a problem. So what is research problem? What is the meaning of problem? Yes. And problem, a statement may be defined, interrogative, testable statement. Yes. Which expresses the relationship between two or more variables. So what is variable? What are the different types of variables are also important part of this chapter. In next class, yes, and I will discuss about what is variables and what are the different types of variables. Variables means which are varied and differ from individual to individual. We can measure also. Suppose our personality, stress, anxiety, happiness. Yes, all are variables. Yes. So now, and problem, research problem. For example, what is the relationship between IQ and classroom achievement? Yes. What is the relationship between anxiety and intelligence among school children? So these are the, examples effects of research problem. Yes, and a good research question is clear, is specific, is answerable also, and is relevant also. Yes. And the process of scientific research begins when a researcher selects a theme or topic for study. Suppose example. Yes, this is called abstract, that means summary of research. An objective of this research, the aims to conduct a timely assessment of the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on the mental health of college students. This is, the objective of research. Yes. And now problem, when a researcher selects a theme or topic for study, the topic is, in this example, effects of COVID-19 pandemic on the mental health of college students. And then the researcher narrows down the focus and develops specific research questions or problems for the study. Yes, because the example, what are the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on the mental health of college students? Yes. And in psychology, we study a diverse range of problems related to our behavior and experiences. Yes. And now, the important thing is that hypothesis also. Yes, what is the meaning of hypothesis? Problem and hypothesis. From problem, we can derive hypothesis. Hypothesis means prediction. Yes, we can predict about research results. We can predict about research results. Yes, hypothesis means prediction. Yes, is important part of our research. We can predict also. Various kinds of hypothesis. And we can test hypothesis also. Hypothesis is a, testable statement. Yes. And after identification of the problem, the researcher proceeds by developing a tentative answer of the problem, which is called hypothesis. Yes. So, from problem, we can derive hypothesis. Hypothesis means, prediction. Yes. And suppose in this example, the hypothesis was, and the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on the mental health of college students. There is a significant effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on the mental health of college students. Yes. And now next, collection of data. Yes, that is also important steps. Data collection requires developing a research design or a blueprint of the entire study. Yes. It requires taking decisions about, various kinds of aspects, participants in the study, methods of data collection, tools to be used in research, procedure for data collection. And the other important thing is that depending upon the nature of the study, researcher has to decide who would be the participants, because in this example, the college students are, the participants. Yes. And now in these examples, and method used interview. Yes. And surveys with 195 students at a large public university in the US to understand the effects of the pandemic on their mental health and well-being. Yes, analyzed through quantitative and qualitative methods also. In this chapter, you have to know what is quantitative and qualitative methods. Yes. And now, the important thing is that, and use of methods of data collections, in this chapter you have to know observation, experimental method, correlation method, case study, interview. In this particular example, used, interview method. Yes. And the researchers needs to decide about appropriate tools. Yes, interview schedule, observation schedule, questionnaire. And now next, drawing conclusion. The next step is to analyze data so collected through the use of statistical procedure to understand what the data mean. Yes. So the important thing is that data analysis. Yes. And now the last, revising research conclusion. On the basis of hypothesis, just revised research conclusion. The researcher may have begun the study with the hypothesis that there exists a relationship between various kinds of problems. Yes. And now in these examples, results of the 195 students, 138 indicated the increased stress and anxiety due to the COVID-19 outbreak. Multiple stressors were identified that contributed to the increased levels of stress, anxiety, and depressive thoughts among students. And now conclusions due to the long-lasting pandemic situations. Yes. And the COVID-19 pandemic brings negative impacts on higher education. The findings of this study highlight the urgent need to develop intervention and preventive strategies to address the mental health of college students. So the steps in conducting research: first, identifying what is a problem of research. What is the theme of research? Yes, from various kinds of sources, and we can create problem. Yes, and from problem, derive hypothesis. Hypothesis means predictions. On the basis of this prediction, just collect data. Yes. And next, drawing conclusions and revising research conclusions. Yes. And now alternative paradigms of research. And alternative paradigms of research, that means what are the changes are happened. And various kinds of paradigms of research. Yes. And now the important part, a different method known as interpretive has emerged. Yes, that means the researcher perspectives are also important. Various kinds of paradigm shift, positivism, post-positivisms, various kinds of paradigm shifts. Yes. But nowadays, the important thing is that the researcher's perspective also are important for research. And psychological inquiry does aim at understanding the self by reflecting of one's own experiences and insights. And now, data, nature of psychological data. The information, also called data, relate to the individual's overt and covert behavior. overt, which are expressed, coverts, the internal behavior. Yes, various kinds of data, you know, demographic information. Example, you know, name, age, birth order, education, occupation, number of children. Physical information. Yes, housing conditions, size of rooms, mode of transportation. Physiological, height, weight, heart rate, duration of sleep, blood pressure, reaction time level. And psychological information, interest, values, creativity, personality. Yes, our thought process, etc. So different types of data or informations: demographic, physical, physiological, and psychological. Yes. Thank you, my dear children.